Across the state, nonprofit organizations work tirelessly to improve the lives of Connecticut residents. Today we will be hearing from two of those organizations. Lisa Hammersley of the School and State Finance Project is here to discuss education funding in Connecticut and how to fix it. But first we are going to talk with Elizabeth Kaesar from the Connecticut River Museum about their upcoming environmental summit, held in conjunction with Wesleyan University. Elizabeth, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Now, we have you on the show today specifically to talk about the summit that you have coming up. But first, could you tell us a little bit about the museum and what you do there?
Sure. So I'm Elizabeth Kaesar. I am the executive director of the Connecticut River Museum, which is located in Essex, Connecticut. So we are directly on the Connecticut River. We're about 6 miles up from Long Island Sound. The Connecticut River itself runs about 410 miles. So it starts all the way up at the border of Canada and
Mm,
then squiggles through as the border between New Hampshire, Vermont, cuts through Massachusetts, and then goes all the way down through Connecticut, past Hartford,
yeah.
past Middletown, and out into Long Island Sound. And the Connecticut River Museum has been around for a little more than 50 years, and we tell the story of the Connecticut River, of its flora and its fauna, of the people who have lived and worked alongside the river and in the river, the ways that the river has changed over time. And then, of course, we're always looking to its future. Where is this body of water going?
Mm,
There's something like 2.4 million people in its watershed. It has been an economic backbone for all of New England. It is the longest river in New England. So if you
mm,
are a person who lives really anywhere in New England, this is a body of water that should matter to you. And we're always
yeah.
trying to encourage people to think about the ways that they are impacted by this watershed.
Essex is super cute, and you're right at the
So,
end of the kind of the little, I don't know if it's the main
yes.
street there, but the cobbled street with the old Grizz and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, it is. It is a very quaint New England street. If you were looking for like peak New England,
Yeah.
Main Street in Essex is absolutely a place to visit. There are lots of very cute shops. The
Shops
Griswold
and
Inn is there.
yep.
There are a number of delightful restaurants, and
So
then
if
you
someone
can
comes to
walk
see the
right down.
museum, they can come check that out and then maybe stop in and get a bite
Mhm.
to eat, do a little shopping. So there's a nice
Yep,
little
you can make
all walkable in that down little area. So
all very
it's a nice
walkable.
like
Yep,
afternoon or something if someone's looking for something to do. I
absolutely.
have been
You
to
could
the
even
museum
bring
myself. I
your
like it quite a bit.
Oh, good. If you're a member, you can come and bring your boat and you can tie up at the museum. And
Oh,
then
that's
you
really
can
cool.
visit the museum, have some lunch, do a little shopping, have your whole walkabout, and then hop back into your boat and go back to wherever your home port is.
For your home port, that's really cool. So we asked you on today specifically because you have an upcoming event called the Connecticut River Valley Environmental Summit. Now, I know it generally, as you've been talking about, you're talking about like the history of the river and that sort of aspect of the museum. So talk to me about the environmental side of what you guys do and also, this event specifically.
Yeah. So the museum has a long history of talking about maritime history of the sort of
Mm,
work that happened along the Connecticut River. But that's not all that we are. So within our collections and within our museum spaces, we not only talk about the incredibly important and vibrant history that happened along the river, but we also think about the arts that have been sort of um, inspired by the river. So
mm,
people who are making art today, people who have made art in the past. And we've tried to put that on display as a way for people to connect with the river on a sort of emotional scale. And then, of course, we're also thinking about the environmental impacts that all of this kind of work has had on the river. How
mm,
has the river's quality degraded over time? How has it improved over time? What is our current condition and where are we going?
yeah.
Um, and this sort of trifecta of things, this maritime history, this ecological awareness, and a sort of sympathetic connection to the arts,
Hmm.
I think sort of is the kind of framework for a lot of what we're doing at the museum. Museums are places that hold objects, obviously. You know, a big
Hmm.
part of what museums do is to take in collection items and put them on display and preserve them for the long term. But in addition to holding actual physical objects, we are also a place that holds ideas. We're a place that holds conversations.
Hmm.
And if we are a museum that wants to think about the history of the river, we have to acknowledge that there won't be history to keep remembering if we don't think to the future, if we don't think about
Hmm.
where the river is going. We can't make new history if there is no tomorrow. And the
Yeah.
story of the river is certainly not complete. So for us as a museum, this summit is sort of an extension of what we are doing. It is a way for us to engage with the ideas and with the conversations that are so important as people are thinking about the current and future state of the Connecticut River
Hmm.
and the watershed that it is a part of.
Yeah. And just how is the river doing right now? Because when I think of rivers in this part of the world, I think of, you know, the industrial, like late 1800s, early part of the 1900s, where there was just PCBs and they were just chucking everything in there. And so in some ways, I think of it as the rivers as being better, but have they gotten better? Have they gotten worse? Is it different things that we worry about now?
Yeah. So I think that the Industrial Revolution was a pretty rough time in the world of rivers, as people are building factories, and there is this sense that rivers are a perpetual source of clean water, and you don't have to worry about what you put in them because they're self-cleaning, right? You put it in and
Yep.
it goes away.
Goes downstream. Bye
Which
bye. Yeah.
and who knows where it goes? And if you're downstream, who cares? This is obviously not a good perspective and one that we
Yeah.
have generally moved away from, which is a very positive thing.
Yeah.
There are stories that we tell at the museum of not so distant history of the 1950s and 60s and 70s when the Connecticut River was pretty polluted, when parents were telling their children not to put don't go swimming in the river.
Yeah.
Maybe you can go in a boat, but don't let it drip on you. When there were manufacturers that were still using the river as a sewage. And so, there was a paint manufacturer, and you could tell what
Yeah.
color paints they were making because the river changed colors depending on what they were dumping in.
Yeah.
Um, One of our former board members describes the river as fizzing.
Mm.
This is not a good thing. This is not a natural fizz.
Not
This
not
is a
something you want in
chemical
your
fizz,
rivers. No.
right? So up until really not so very long ago, the Connecticut River and many other rivers were in a pretty sad ecological state.
Yeah.
And a lot of different things happened kind of in the same time frame to move the river to a much better state that it finds
Mm.
itself in today. So you had young people who were taking action, who were in canoes, who were writing letters, who were making statements. You had Katharine Hepburn lending her voice and her image to conserving the Connecticut River. You had Rachel Carson and Roger Tory Peterson who were thinking about the flora and fauna along the river
Mhm.
and were leading to things like the Clean Water Act and the banning of DDT. So all of these things push the river in a much better direction.
Yeah.
And the river gets a grade every other year in the Long Island Sound Study. And the last time they did that, the Connecticut River got for the first time in its history an A minus, which is
Okay.
a really solid mark that we can all feel really, really good about. And
Hmm.
that in all of its history, for as long as they've been doing this, going back to the sort of really dark days of Fizzing River,
Yeah.
we've never seen a grade at that level. So that's a really positive thing that we can take to heart and celebrate. The Connecticut River is the only national blueway, for example.
Hmm.
There are good things that are happening
Yeah.
here. At the same time, um, that doesn't mean that everything is like hunky dory and we can go and
Hmm.
forget the river, because there are still invasive species that are impacting the river.
Mm,
Things like water chestnuts and hydrilla are major problems, which we collectively have not yet figured out how to address.
yeah.
There are
Hydrilla
still
is the like
fewer.
the weed that grows in the bottom and kind of chokes everything out.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay.
hydrilla, you think of it as like um a, a plant in like a fish tank, the
It's like
cute
the
little
fuzzy sort of,
green
yeah.
stuff that
Okay.
kind of comes
Yep.
up. And it's adorable in a fish tank. Um,
But not
but
in a
it's
river.
not so adorable in the Connecticut River, where it grows quickly and massively and blocks out everything else and can really sort of kill a water area.
Mm.
And it's called hydrilla because it's sort of like a hydra. If you cut it, it will grow back on all
More and
sides.
more and
So
more.
so
Yeah.
cutting it doesn't help.
So is this a
Um,
case that someone literally like take their fish bowl with the hydrilla in it and the fish and dump it in the river? Is that how some of that stuff gets in there?
so there is a sense that that is a thing that happened,
Yeah.
that the hydrilla has moved from south to north. It wasn't always
Mm.
here. And I actually remember back from my youth watching a Reading Rainbow episode with LeVar Burton and manatees in Florida, and
Yeah.
they were eating hydrilla, and everyone was very happy about the hydrilla. Um, but the hydrilla has traveled from fish tanks
Mm.
and from some natural sources and made its way into the Connecticut River and has actually evolved since it's been in the Connecticut River.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we
It's like
now have
adapted to our environment.
our own special species of hydrilla, which is really very good at dominating in the Connecticut River. So
So we
we
need
have
some manatees.
Well, I
No.
mean, maybe that's the thing. Maybe we need Connecticut River manatees. I'm sure someone is thinking about that. And that's sort of why we want to have a summit is
Yeah.
to take people who are having big ideas about the river, who are trying out different things, who are thinking about the issues, get all of those experts and those idea makers together to have impactful conversations that make people think.
Yeah.
Whether we're thinking about the invasive species in the river or whether we're thinking about like rainwater overflows and sewage overflows, which also
Hmm.
impact the river, whether we're thinking about fish and bugs and if there are enough of them to sustain the wildlife that we need for a healthy river.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that are out there that impact the river. All of those things are interconnected, which makes it complicated. And that's what makes it so much fun because it's hard, because there isn't an easy answer,
Yeah.
because there isn't like a single thing and everything impacts everything else. You have hydrilla, you bring in manatees, then like they're going to eat something else, and you have created a whole other set of problems that you never
Yeah.
imagined. Right. So we like to bring in lots of people
Hmm.
who are big thinkers, who are small thinkers, who are just sort of teetering around the edges, who are just interested in this, put them all together and get them into conversation,
Yeah.
get them thinking, get them talking, and get people to sort of begin to work together to imagine and to brainstorm and just to sort of hold these ideas and bring them with them at the end of the day. Because the more people who are thinking about this, the more ideas that we're ultimately going to generate, and who knows where that's going to take us in, the next year or 5 years or 10
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so I was looking at the website talking about the event, and you're doing this in conjunction with Wesleyan University, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
it's actually going to
So
be located at Wesleyan, like the event site.
yep. So it is happening on May 2nd from 10 to 4. And it is on site at Wesleyan. And we are working with the Bailey College for the environment.
Mm,
And we've worked with them for the last 3 years as we have done this summit. And obviously they have great minds who are thinking about a lot of these
yeah.
environmental issues. And so it's a great partnership for both of our organizations.
Yeah, I imagine so. It's good synergy there. And just, since we're CCM and we, talk about town government, how do you think it's important to work with um, like town leaders and town governments as far as working with the river, protecting the river? Is that an important component, like the local government sort of
Oh,
getting
for
them on
sure.
board, sort of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that if there's a lesson to be learned from the 20th century moment of river recovery,
Hmm.
that it takes everyone. This can't be a thing that's top down or bottom up exclusively.
Yeah.
It really requires that everyone is working together to make choices that are going to benefit the river. And that
Mm.
means that you have kids who are worried about pollution and not putting plastics into the river, but you also have towns that are thinking about how to deal with that same issue. You have the gateway commissions, you have land trusts, you have
Yeah.
the state government, and you have the federal government. And all of those layers are working collectively to make the best possible choices for our waterways and for our environment.
Yeah. And I also saw there was one other thing that looked like a fun sort of element to this event is a poster contest of some sort.
Oh, so it's maybe not quite as fun as a poster contest.
Okay.
But but we
A
will have.
presentation, poster presentation.
Yes. So within the space, there are a couple of different elements. So we have table presenters, exhibitors who are going to be talking about the things that they do, and then we will have poster presentations. So these are often students or academics who are
Hmm.
working on a research topic, and they put together a really beautiful poster, and they'll be with their poster to talk to you about the thing that they are thinking about. And then
Okay.
right before lunch, we'll have a lightning round. So each of our poster presenters will get a minute or two to talk about their topic, and then
Hmm.
they'll be available during lunch. So anyone who is interested can go and chat with them more. During the lunch period, we also have luncheon tables, so you can get together with a guide and sort of have a
Hmm.
conversation about a particular topic. And lunch is obviously included in the day
Yeah.
as an added perk.
And talking about the perks and what's included, who can attend this?
Pretty much anyone can attend
Okay.
this. So this is very much open to the public,
Okay.
and there are Zoom tickets available. So if attending Wesleyan in person is inconvenient for your
Okay.
schedule, you can purchase a Zoom ticket and Zoom in and out all day long.
So if
One of
you're
the things
too
that's
far
really
away or for whatever reason you can't make it there. Okay.
You can Zoom. One of the things that's always really important to us is making sure that we are being as inclusive as possible and that we're thinking all the way up the river.
Hmm.
410 miles is pretty far.
Yeah.
So, if you're at the headwaters, come by Zoom. So we have the Zoom tickets available, and then we have student tickets. So anyone who is a student has a reduced rate. And then we have museum member tickets and we have regular tickets. We are encouraging of a big tent. We really think that the solutions to
Hmm.
our river challenges require lots of different people with lots of different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
So, Katharine Hepburn and Rachel Carson may not have been two people who you'd think of as both fighting hard for the same cause. You have
Mm.
this sort of actress and an environmentalist, but both of them were necessary. So I think that it's about opening up the gates wide and telling everyone who has any interest in this topic, or even if you're not super interested, but you're just part of the watershed and you're part of the community, or you have some tangential interest in like
Hmm.
other pieces of this, you are a municipal person and you have concerns about what's happening in your town. This is a place to get together with other people who are sort of concerned citizens.
Yeah.
And we'll have lots of different people. So there are, experts in the field, there are practitioners, there are students, there are museum people. So it's a pretty big tent.
Yeah.
We're pretty open-minded and we welcome everyone.
Well, great. If someone wanted to learn more about this or get tickets or whatever, how would they go about doing that? Is there a website they could go to?
Yeah, so I would recommend that you go to the museum's website, which is ctrivermuseum.org.
Hmm.
And currently, if you are looking at the website, there is a pink banner towards the top, and it has the direct link to the Connecticut River Valley Environmental 2026 Summits
Okay.
website, where you can get all of the information, the list of program speakers, you can see who was on our advisory committee, you can get all of your tickets. It's your sort of one-stop shop for everything summit related.
Great. And the rest of the website, obviously, they can check out what's going on at the museum, other events. I assume there's other events during the year, museum
Yes,
itself.
we are busy all the time, and you can go to our events page and you can scroll through and see everything that is happening at the museum. You can find information about our two vessels that we take folks out on
Oh, you
year-round
have
River Quest and
you have boats
Onrust.
or vessels. What's the difference between a boat and a vessel?
Well, they're all floating. So
Okay.
we have one that sails and one that cruises. So River Quest
Gotcha.
is our cruiser, Onrust is our historic sailing vessel, and we go out year round almost. December, we take a quick pause,
That's a little
but
cold,
we
yeah.
encourage people to come out. We just opened a new exhibit in honor of America's 250th anniversary, all
Yeah.
about the Turtle submarine, which was built by a Connecticut native who lived not too far from the museum and tested the submarine in the Connecticut River before it went into the American Revolution.
Hmm.
And if you don't know the story of David
Was that
Bushnell
Bushnell? That's it. Okay.
Bushnell and his really, truly remarkable invention. You
Yeah.
should come to the museum. We have two full-size models of the turtle, one that you can go inside and one that you can just walk around on the outside that
Yeah,
actually
because
went
the
into the
whole
Connecticut
thing is
River.
like not that big. It's like the
It's
size of
not that big.
like a VW bug or something. Like not even. It's
Yeah, I think that's probably about
yeah.
about the right size for it. It's big enough for one person.
Yeah.
And that's it. But this little contraption changed, the way we think about warfare in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And so come and see the story of that. We have summer camps, we have programs
Oh
for
wow.
students, we have concerts on the lawn.
So there's all
So
sorts of
all
things going
summer
on at the
long.
River Museum.
We are hopping. So, come and visit us. We got great stuff going.
All right, great. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for talking with us today. We certainly appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Always a pleasure to chat.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM.
On Monday, April 20th, CCM and the School and State Finance Project held a press conference at the Capitol to highlight the need for ECS reform. Speakers from across the state spoke about the issue. Here are a few highlights.
There's a saying in organizational psychology that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it does. Unfortunately, the funding of public schools in the state of Connecticut is the best example of that, and that the funding system places way too much of a burden on local taxpayers.
The time is now. The time is now. And folks that have been following this have heard from preachers, they've heard from teachers, they've heard from advocates, they've heard from mayors, they've heard from first selectmen, they've heard from superintendents, they have heard from students. Thousands of people coming up to the Capitol, Republicans, Democrats, independents, small towns, big cities, everyone across the state asking for more education funding. Everyone across the state. It couldn't be clearer that the time is now.
This legislative session, CCM is focused on seeking out ways to improve the way Connecticut delivers a public education system and make funding more equitable. No discussion of education funding would be complete without seeking the input of the School and State Finance Project. Their data-driven research and analysis is second to none and has given them a reputation of reliability and trustworthiness. We are joined today by Lisa Hammersley, their executive director, to discuss the future of education and how we can fix the educational cost-sharing formula. Lisa, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always good to have you on the show. Today in particular, we're going to have you on to talk some about the ECS formula, but it has been a while since we had you on. So just for the people at home, just briefly, could you introduce yourself and what you do and what the State and School Finance Project does?
Absolutely. I'm Lisa Hammersley. I'm the executive director of the School and State Finance Project. For those who do not know us, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy organization. And essentially, we take all forward-facing and publicly available data, we analyze it, and then we develop policy solutions and work directly with community members,
Mhm.
other education stakeholders such as superintendents, Board of Education members, mayors, and
Yeah.
try to effectuate change up at the General Assembly to
Hmm.
drive more state resources to support public school students,
Hmm.
and to do so in an equitable manner.
So we worked with you before, but on this particular issue, ECS, how did you guys come into being involved with it, and what's kind of your take at State School Fund on ECS and what's wrong with it?
Absolutely. So since we are an education funding organization,
Hmm.
we were established 10 years ago, and our organization was established at that time because there were a multitude of different funding formulas and or methods to support
Hmm.
public school students. The education cost sharing formula, which is referred to as ECS, is the
Hmm.
state's main form of education aid. That is municipal aid. It goes directly to municipalities to support students that attend local public schools. And it's the
Hmm.
largest, as I mentioned, source of K-12 state support. That is why our organization is very intent on analyzing that funding stream because it is very critical and crucial for the
Hmm.
state support of K-12 students.
Yeah, and than that, the money for education comes from local property taxes.
Right. So there's three main revenue
Yeah.
sources for local public schools. We're just going to speak about local public schools and not the other types of public schools that the state has, like
Yeah,
magnet schools or charter schools or agri-science students.
that's a,
So
that's a
we're
whole
just
other
gonna,
thing to talk about. It could be a
yeah,
whole other show. Maybe we will.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
we're just focused on local public schools. So for
Hmm.
local public schools, the three main sources of revenue are one, the state, as previously mentioned, two, local sources with property taxes, and then the third is federal revenue.
Hmm.
Federal revenue is not a large share of support for our students here, and they are
Yeah.
primarily driven for very student-based funding formulas, such as low-income students or multilingual learners or students with disabilities. In our state, we are very reliant on local property taxes, and that is
Yeah.
where a lot of the issues that we're seeing across the state, that's the real issue right now that is percolating because the state is fully funding the education cost sharing formula, what is in statute right now, and we can break
Hmm.
down all of those components. But with the state fully funding ECS and with no additional state increases, all of the cost increases that districts experience in the upcoming year and in future years will need to be borne by local property taxes. And we know that property
Yeah.
taxes in our state are high.
Yeah.
And it is just exacerbating this real regressive tax that the state has.
Yeah. Because our towns don't really have other options or for ways to raise that money other than the property taxes. Really, there's no sales taxes or any of that kind of stuff for the towns.
No, and we know this, but Connecticut is a very segregated state in terms of its wealth.
Mm.
And you could have a next door neighbor in terms of a municipality that is very property wealthy. Maybe they can
Hmm.
increase their taxes by a small amount and generate significant sums of money. But we do have some communities that simply don't have that tax base. They don't have the ability to generate
Hmm.
significant sums of money to support their students. And in those communities, if the state is not stepping up and the state is not providing year over year increases, that means that there's going to be cuts. There's going to be reductions to support those students. And also, not coincidentally, but those districts that are more
Hmm.
property poor, are also those districts that are trying to educate students with the greatest needs. So we
Yeah.
have a real problem here in the state of Connecticut where you have high need student populations largely clustered in these communities that have lower property wealth and not necessarily that ability to pay. And it's just a reduction in services, which is exactly the wrong direction that we should be going, and we should be
Yeah.
supporting all of our students.
Yeah. I know we've been talking about this at CCM, and one of the things that we were discussing is, that's fully funded to that level that they set in 2013.
Right.
What would that look like if it had grown at pace with inflation? You
Yeah,
know,
so that number that you're referring to is referred to
mm,
as the foundation.
mhm,
It is the base of the ECS formula. So we
okay.
can say and describe the ECS formula in very basic and simplistic terms. You have the foundation, which is supposed to represent the cost to educate a student without additional learning needs.
Mhm,
It has been 11,525 since 2013.
yeah.
You then take that foundation and you multiply it times weights that we have in the formula that are based on student need,
Mhm,
including weights to support low-income students and multilingual learners, also concentrated poverty. And then you have that total cost to
mhm,
educate a student population. And then the formula then breaks that up between the state and local share. But
yeah.
when you have the base, when you have the foundation, when you have that one constant figure that is supposed to represent the cost to educate one student, period,
Mhm,
and it has not been adjusted since 2013, your
yeah.
formula is not funding appropriately what it actually costs to educate students. We know
Yeah, that
that inflation,
11,000 whatever doesn't buy what it did in 2013.
absolutely, inflation is a thing. We all know that. We know that across the state, but
Every
we know
time
that
we
in
go
our
out
own
to the store,
household.
yeah.
Absolutely. So if it had been adjusted since 2013, that foundation would be in the 16,000 range. So
Yeah.
that's a sizable investment for the state to make in the approximate 550 to 600 million dollars range. But our
Yeah.
organization, we want to step up to the General Assembly with solutions, and we
Mhm,
have. And so we actually partnered with CCM. We've talked about this policy proposal with
yeah.
your leadership and your membership, but there's a way to adjust that foundation up to the $16,000 level and to
Mhm,
phase it in what the
okay.
state had done previously in order to
Mhm,
get around that price range that the speaker and the president pro tem of the Senate keep referring to, that 150, $170 million range,
mhm. So just not all at once, kind of over
right?
a series of years, get up to that. No,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
and I think both of our organizations would love it if it just was fully funded tomorrow. But you're saying that we recognize that that's not the way it's going to work, and so these are good sort of ways to get things done.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for the state to invest $550 million or
Hmm.
$600 million all at once, I mean, that would be a huge ask.
Hmm.
And not one, I mean, the state should be doing that.
Yeah,
Let's put that on the table. That should be
yeah,
what the
yeah.
state should be doing. However, we understand that there's constraints. We understand that there's guardrails. We understand that there's not an appetite to make that large of an investment. So there's a way to adjust the formula to modernize it, for lack of a better
Hmm.
term, to get it to be like where the state should be
Hmm.
in terms of an inflation adjusted foundation and to set the state up for future increases to support our kids. So not just one year, not just, okay, we're going to do this for the next school year, but to set the state on a path where every year it's not only
Hmm.
phasing in this higher foundation, but it's also simultaneously adjusting that foundation for inflation
Yeah, so
so
that
that
we're
we're
not
never
having
playing catch
doing
up.
this again in 13 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Like having to have these same fights or asks over and over again. Just make it part of the thing that it grows with everything else.
That's right.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that we've also pointed out in talking about this at CCM is that, we're asking this now, and right now emergency funds, state emergency funds are full, the budget, there's a surplus, asking for stuff to be there that should be there, and they have the money right now.
I mean, they've had the money for years, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a full budget reserve fund, which is fantastic. It is at
Yeah.
this 18% of appropriations, which is great. The state has been also generating significant surpluses above and beyond what the budget reserve fund
Hmm.
statutorily needs. And all of those resources have been utilized to pay down the state's pension debt, which
Hmm.
is, you know,
Needs to happen as
fantastic.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I will say, however, is that Governor Malloy did enact meaningful reforms to the state's pension system, and the state
Hmm.
has been making those actuarially required contributions, and has the Malloy reforms have smoothed our state's payment and obligation
Hmm.
year over year. So we are on a good path.
So
I
it's
like
trending the right
to
way now.
yeah.
Hopefully.
I
Yeah.
mean, but I like to compare what the state has been doing with you have a mortgage on your house, right? It's a 20-year mortgage, and you have a payment plan to
Hmm.
pay off your mortgage, but your car is broken. And instead of replacing your car, you decide that you're going to continue to put any extra money that you have towards your house and paying down your mortgage sooner.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but you still have a broken car and you still have a need over here that is a real need. And so I do think that if the state were to say, okay, we're going to invest in our students instead of just
Yeah.
paying down this mortgage debt, that would definitely be a reasonable utilization of those funds beyond just paying off unfunded pension liabilities.
Quicker. Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on where your values are.
How does this play into equity in our towns?
I mean, as I previously mentioned, we as a state are very segregated.
Hmm.
Wealth is segregated, high need communities are segregated, and high need communities are primarily in
Hmm.
areas of lower property wealth. And
Yeah.
so it is an equity issue overall. I mean, the formula is not a bad formula, despite what people say.
Hmm.
It just hasn't been updated to reflect the modern cost to educate a student. But
So the
it's not
structure makes sense. It's just the numbers don't work
absolutely.
anymore.
So if you look across the country, what other states have for funding formulas to support public school students, they're largely two primary methods of distributing state aid for students. The
Mhm.
first is what we have, which is an enrollment student-based formula.
Okay.
Um, and the other is a resource allocation model similar to like what Massachusetts uses. And
Okay.
the Massachusetts model basically says, okay, you need this many teachers, you need this many principals, you need this many library specialists. Like
Hmm.
it really is a very detailed and I think more cumbersome formula, but it is one that is used. Our
Yeah.
formula is also one that is commonly used. And I do think our formula is one that is like looked to as a formula that could be employed in other states that don't have such a funding mechanism.
Hmm.
The problem in our state is that that foundation has not been adjusted. There are approximately 20 states that have foundation inflators built into their formula. So this is
Okay.
not a common thing, what we're
And it's
asking
not
for.
unheard of. It's been done
No.
before. Yeah.
And it's really what the state needs to do now that it has been faithful in a formula since 2019. Before 2019, don't forget, we were just flat funding schools every year and printing out grants in the back
Yeah.
of the budget. It was just printed numbers that didn't reflect anything. We are using a formula. It is based on the number of kids in a district. It is based
Yeah.
on the needs of the kids in the district. And there is an equity metric built into the
Hmm.
formula so that if you are a lower property wealth community, you get a
Yeah.
larger percent of state share as compared to a higher percent of state, or excuse me, a higher wealth community. But with that being said, all of the conversations that are going on right now is a huge equity conversation because we're hearing of the largest budget deficits occurring
Hmm.
in our low wealth, high need communities,
Yeah.
and those communities that probably won't be able to step up to the plate to respond to the needs of their district, and as a result, have cuts inflicted on their students. And costs are going up in a variety of different areas.
Yeah.
One, districts employ teachers and other professionals to support their students and to educate their students. And contractual wage increases are real. We know that every year, individuals' wages need to go up to keep up with inflation. And so contractual wage increases are a huge cost increase for
Hmm.
districts. Besides that, healthcare premiums,
Hmm.
also a significant cost driver. Transportation, a cost driver. Utilities to operate your plants. Oil prices are high.
Yeah.
They're gonna be even higher.
You got to keep the
Um,
school warm in the winter. Yeah.
Absolutely. Those are all cost drivers for districts that the state as a whole experiences like state government. But not only that, households. These are all normal cost increases that
Hmm.
districts are experiencing, and they are fiscally dependent on municipalities. They don't have any other option for taxing. You're either getting your revenue from the state, you're getting your revenue through the federal government, which is a very small percentage, or
Yeah.
you're getting it from local property taxes. And if you're not getting the revenue, you need to cut. You need to reduce your expenditures, which could result in higher class sizes, lower mental
Hmm.
health supports. You can go across and look at what would be cut. But we are at a real critical point right now. The
Hmm.
state has done a great job of getting to full funding of this formula. When it
Yeah.
was first enacted in 2017, it was estimated to cost $600 million. So it was a sizable state investment, but the
Hmm.
state set itself on a path to get to full funding. And districts used that phase-in schedule as a way
Hmm.
to mitigate their annual cost increases. So a few years ago, if you knew you were getting $5 million more from the state,
Hmm.
if your budget deficit was $8 million, for example, you knew you're getting that five from the state. So the balance and what you're asking your municipality to support is only three,
Hmm.
um, which is a far lower number. But right
Yeah.
now, where we're at flat funding next year for school districts, if your budget deficit is $20 million, that's what you're asking your district or your town for. You're likely not going to get a plus $20 million investment paid for from your property taxes in 1 year.
No.
No.
And so we're talking about some of the different communities and different needs, and I know like some of our cities have issues with stuff being off the tax rolls, the schools and the hospital stuff, but the
Mhm.
pilot program tries to cover a lot of that. But are we just talking about like city areas when we talking about communities that don't have, the tax base, or is this a problem in rural areas of the state too?
It is a significant problem in rural areas of the state. We've been working closely with a group of superintendents and Board of Education members on the northeastern side of
Hmm.
Connecticut. Those are very rural districts. They
Yep.
don't have a ton of property wealth, I mean, if you drive through that area, you see there's not a lot of development. There's not a
Hmm.
lot going on in those communities. And in those communities, the budget crunch right now is real. And those superintendents and Board of Education members are really concerned because they're not our large urban or even large suburban districts. These are
Yeah.
very small communities. And we have regionalization on the books. We do have
Hmm.
declining enrollment. That is a thing that everybody should acknowledge. Many communities, I
Some
think there's
the
only a
schools are a little bit
few.
smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only a few communities that are
Hmm.
consistently growing, but most of
Yeah.
our communities are seeing and experiencing declining enrollment, and we do have regionalization on the books or
Hmm.
on the in the statutes, I should say.
Yeah.
But there are real barriers with the way that the state has structured regionalizing.
Hmm.
I do think that there are ways to make working cooperatively more appealing for school districts
Hmm.
and something that they're more willing to look into. But as is currently structured, communities have they do think twice about it because
Yeah.
there are those barriers. But for our rural communities, the threat right now is real. They are
Hmm.
also looking for more support, and they simply don't have the tax base to continue
Yeah.
to invest in their kids.
Yeah. And talking about the declining enrollment, I don't know if they've fixed this more recently, but wasn't there a problem with them not being able to then lower their budget at some of the schools, even though their enrollment was going down?
So in statute, there are some exceptions. What you're referring to is the minimum budget requirement. It's
Mm,
referred to as MBR, and
yeah.
it kind of holds communities to a certain threshold. Once you increase support for your students, you can't go back down. You can't
Mm,
reduce your total support for your students. There are some exceptions, however, that allow for communities to reduce their MBR, and one of them is declining enrollment. But
okay.
you can't take the full value. You only get a partial value. So, like, let's say you
Okay.
lose 10 kids, you can't just reduce your per pupil support by 10, it's only half.
Mm,
But there are some ways to reduce your MBR, but they're more narrowly defined.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of the other things we're talking about, like there's ways for the legislature to make it easier for the towns to work together to adjust the budget requirement based on enrollment. All these different things are ways that could be made easier for our towns and cities.
Absolutely. So, like, I'll give you for example. We
Mhm,
allow designated high schools in the state, whereas if you are a small community and small number of students attending high school and you don't want to operate your own high school,
mhm,
you can, and this is widely used on the eastern side of the state.
mhm,
You could come into agreements with other surrounding communities and say, okay, for the high school students in our town, you can either attend this school or this school or this school, and then your community where you reside
mhm.
pays tuition for you to attend those schools.
Okay.
The statute only allows for designated high schools. Why not allow for designated elementary and middle
Mm,
school? There's no real reason why you shouldn't be allowed to kind of outsource all of
yeah.
your education and to offer selections for your students to attend those schools. So that's just like one example. And of
Is
course,
it the
that's
idea of
voluntary.
like little kids on long bus rides or something? Is that the
Maybe,
yeah,
maybe. But we do have some very small communities,
yeah.
where the bus ride might not be that significant as compared to some of our larger geographic
Yeah.
communities. I mean, I will say that for our rural communities, I do think that our formula could definitely be adjusted. And we've been asked by some Eastern superintendents to model out various options, but
Yeah.
they do have different cost drivers that other communities that are more densely populated don't
Mm,
have. And so there could be ways to adjust the formula to recognize their uniqueness
hmm.
and to
Yeah.
try to provide additional support for
A
those.
little less one size fits all sort of thing.
Absolutely. And also, another caveat is the fact that when the General Assembly enacted this current formula that we've
Hmm.
been utilizing and following, there were at the time communities that were considered overfunded. And so
Mm,
those communities that were deemed overfunded according to the formula, um, they were scheduled to receive annual reductions,
hmm.
a phase out of their funding to get to full funding. The General Assembly has not allowed that to occur for the last three bienniums. So all of those districts have been just flat funded year after year after year. Those towns haven't seen any increases.
Hmm.
And so we really need the state to modernize that formula. Yet again, if you increase the foundation, many of those communities' grants are going to flip from overfunded to underfunded, and then those
Hmm.
communities will start to receive increases in state support moving forward.
So Lisa, if you were gonna, give a final thought message to the legislature about what you think needs to happen with this, what would it be?
It would be that we are at a critical point. Connecticut students need your continued investment. We have a good formula. It needs to be updated. It needs to accurately reflect the cost to educate students without additional learning needs. And then it also needs to be adjusted to reflect the actual cost to educate students with additional learning needs, such as our low-income students and our multilingual learners. I will say that the General Assembly has done a great job of
Mhm.
making sure that they continue to invest in our students and that they continue to show up and show their support with additional state aid.
Mhm.
We have an affordability crisis right now, and when you
Yeah.
have flat funding of education for our local public schools, you are placing all of that burden on local property taxes. And if the key word this session is affordability, you
Yeah.
cannot address affordability without addressing education funding. And I sincerely hope that they continue to invest in students to do so using the underlying education cost sharing formula and to set
Mhm.
it up on a path moving forward to adjust that formula for inflation.
And if they wanted to find some information about this, you have a website, correct?
We have an awesome website, schoolstatefinance.org. We also, if you go to that website, we also have an app that you can put on your
Mhm.
phone and download to your phone where you can pull up right at your fingertips, very easy to understand and accessible information on K-12 funding and
Mhm.
spending here in the state of Connecticut. We really don't need to analyze and to spend a long time analyzing how Connecticut funds education. The
Mhm.
General Assembly knows how we fund education. They
Yeah.
understand where the formula is has its shortcomings,
Mhm.
and the General Assembly has time to act now.
Well, great. Lisa, thanks so much for talking with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I look forward to being back soon.
All right, take care. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state and local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or a member of municipal leaders.